Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown. Jay, how's it going, my guy?
It's going good, man. It's been a long time since we've been on the pod, so we have so much to catch up on. I mean, for this quarterly report we're going to keep it light today, but I think at the same time, we've seen enough basketball through this first portion of the season to feel good about some teams, feel bad about some teams. And I think some of the storylines we were looking at before the season started when we did our 21 questions, I think some of the storylines are starting to finally like settle in a little bit. And it's been fun kind of tracking them. But I think you have some explaining to do, TV.
Yeah, as you can see over the past, I know, like what the last 40, 50 seconds of recording, I'm in a banana costume. And I know that this feels like this feels like a distant part away because it's been 2 weeks since we wrapped up October November's daily NBA picks challenge, but I lost by a game. I have to wear this banana costume for this episode, as you can see here. But I'm telling you, it's a full banana costume. I had to do this for some like bar event for my friend, so like I just had to bring it out for this episode. But yeah, this is my punishment. I have to wear a freaking banana costume this entire episode. But yeah, but Jay, I wouldn't be laughing so much, bro. You're like 2 games down right now in the daily picks.
Yeah, you're not
So
wrong. And to be honest, man, we haven't really shared too much with everybody just yet. But the daily picks challenge forfeits are only going to get worse. So
yeah,
I might need to get my act together before it gets bad. You mentioned this off camera, and it's a really good point. December is a very unique month. In the NBA this season, especially with all of the NBA Cup stuff taking place. So it's not gonna be nearly as many chances to kind of close this gap compared to the October November slate that we had beforehand. So, like, those double point setups that we have kind of in play, and just being a lot more careful about some of these spreads. I think I'm gonna have to start picking a lot less with my heart and a lot more with my head, just because I think a team's gonna win doesn't mean they're also going to cover the spread. I gotta like start locking in. But
yeah,
hey, man, it only gets worse from here.
it's going to continue to get worse. And you wanted to make sure that you're following the Hit Your Free Throws podcast pages, TikTok, Instagram, if you want to follow along with that. But we have a big episode for you guys today. Like you said, we're going to be going through our own quarterly report of the NBA, talking about the Toronto Temple being finally announced slash leaked. I know they got leaked earlier. That's why they kind of like made the announcement a lot earlier. And of course, we got the draft. We got the quiz. It's going to be a great episode for y'all. But before we get into that, we do have to plug our socials. Remember, like I mentioned before, TikTok and Instagram for the best daily make content at Hit Your Free Throws Pod. Those links can be found in the description down below. But also our individual our individual pages at TV on Basketball, at the Knockdown J. Those links will be found in the description down below. In terms of YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening on any podcast network, Spotify, or Apple, make sure you leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Yeah, man, we got a good episode today. I'm looking forward to hearing some of the players you bring up.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what, Jay? We're going to switch up the order a little bit. We're going to
Okay.
start with the Toronto Tempo. We're going to start with
Oh
the
yeah,
Toronto
no,
Tempo.
yeah, no, yeah, no problem.
Let's go right into Toronto Tempo because the
Yeah.
WNBA announced this. I think this was like what, maybe a few days before the Golden State Valkyrie expansion draft. They announced the Toronto Tempo.
It was pretty much a few days before the expansion draft happened.
Yeah, and the Toronto like brand, the new Toronto team is going to be called the Toronto Tempo. If you guys have seen the logo, there's like these little, like what are those things, like those like little lines coming up from the side representing the five boroughs of Toronto. Look, I know
Mhm.
them here. We got Hamilton, we got Scarborough, we got a bunch of those other ones. It's a great, it's a solid, description of the logo. The logo, on the other hand, in my opinion, kind of okay. The team name kind of okay. But I'm gonna throw it over to Jay. I know a lot of the people here in Toronto are kind of mixed on the Toronto Temple being announced. But as someone coming from being a fan outside of Toronto, what are your thoughts on it, Jay?
So, I mean, it's a very interesting take on trying to represent the Toronto area. I thought the five boroughs representation was like a very unique take on it. I mean, let's be honest. There's not too many logos within the NBA that like are direct representations of the places they represent, right? For example, you guys with the Toronto Raptors, like I mean, don't get me wrong, very iconic jersey slates, but like, what does the Raptors have to do with anything? In terms of, I mean, at one point, even with the Vancouver Grizzlies, I think that one maybe is a little bit more like area dependent, but like Chicago Bulls, for example, right? Like you go down the list, and it's
Yeah.
like there's plenty of logos that don't necessarily represent the area in which their team is located. So the fact that they were able to get that unique take in like integrated with the logo, I think was a cool little like play on the design. Now on the flip side, as somebody who has like a weird guilty pleasure of following like graphic designers on Instagram, this was a little interesting of a choice from like a branding standpoint, because I just wonder if you guys, especially as like Toronto fans directly, can get behind like the memorabilia that's gonna come with this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
You
like
guys
the
have the
simplicity.
Raptors. You guys are spoiled in a way from an NBA perspective
Yeah.
when it comes to like the different like jersey setups you guys have. You guys have easily, I think, between you guys and the Grizzlies, the most iconic throwback jersey of all
Yeah, I mean,
time.
if you've been watching the Raptors this year, the 30th anniversary, you've seen like the full
Yeah,
of the courts, the jerseys. Like the Raptors,
yeah.
Raptors fans are spoiled.
Yeah, if you really watch the Raptors, like specifically this year, you make a really good point with the 30th anniversary stuff. You really see how like thoughtful the Toronto Raptors organization has been when it comes to not only the rollout for this year, because they were teasing this before the season started. Remember,
Yeah,
we were joking about like whether or not they were going to bring the throwback purple jerseys back like months before the season
yeah,
even started. We were having that conversation back then. But then, for them to kind of, I think we've seen at least nine different I think we've seen at least nine different like jersey combinations through them so far this season, and some facets, maybe at least four or five. But they've had a good handful of different like opportunities to show, not to mention the city jerseys are, I believe,
yeah,
coming soon too. So like you guys have been spoiled from a design perspective with the Raptors. So it just feels like the tempo. It feels like with this logo and this design, it's giving off like definitely new kid on the block AAU team that clearly is still working on the
yeah.
budget. You know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
it's like the Utah Jazz highlighter jerseys where you're like, I mean, okay, I guess.
Yeah,
We'll have to see. I think the color scheme is gonna be the most important thing for this team at this point.
yeah. I think like it really depends on like how it's gonna look like on the court, on the jerseys, on the thing. That's what I think it's gonna really like sway the fans because
Yeah.
as of right now, very simple logo. A team in the temple, like I'm trying to imagine like what's gonna be our mascot, what's gonna kind of be like I don't know, just kind of just a whole branding around it is still kind of like
Yeah.
I'm trying to like think about it in my head and I can't really like put it together. But
Yeah.
I think it's like I like that it's simple. I like that it's simple. Like that's like sometimes like simple is good. I just think that when you're trying to event, like especially like when you have to compare to the Toronto Raptors, I know it's two completely different ownership groups, but it's still
Right.
gonna be compared to the Toronto Raptors. And when you have like such an iconic logo, such an iconic set of jerseys stuff like that, you want to kind of keep that same energy with the tempo. So it was definitely an interesting choice. I would say it's like right there in the middle for me as a kind of a Toronto sports fan.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll look better as it looks on the court. Maybe it'll grow on me. But as of right now, I'm just thinking it's like okay. It's like
Yeah.
it's just like okay, really.
I think, and we said this, we kind of talked about this off camera a little bit, but like I think the biggest thing with the Toronto Tempo is literally just going to be the fact that I think you guys' basketball acumen out there, like you guys just love for the game out there, is really going to carry the notoriety for that team in year one. I think that added with the draft class that year is going to be so important. If I'm not mistaken, I actually believe that's like the Flo J year from LSU, because I believe she's eligible to come out next season. So
Yeah.
Juju's still a ways out, so that maybe not her yet. But I think who you guys are able to get initially in the draft, what the free agency pool looks like, and like just you guys' philosophy around kind of like rallying around this team, I think is really going to carry them in the first season. See, the difference between Toronto And the Golden State Valkyries, for example, too. And I've realized this from like the media side as somebody who's like kind of really tried to tap in on that end as a media member. The Golden State Valkyries have like very significant support from the Golden State Warriors team. Like their PR department is through the same building.
Hmm.
When you go on to the Golden State Valkyries website, all of their contact information really still kind of flows through the Golden State Warriors, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like integration between those two franchises that I think is going to really help boost the notoriety of the Valkyries early and often. The question will be how much of that can we see for Toronto when it's their turn? Obviously, at this point right now, it's hard to say because the team's not even formulated right yet, right? This
Yeah.
team isn't coming until the following season, right? The 2026 season. So of course, there's only gonna be but so much traction behind it, but it'll be interesting to see how much backing not only the Toronto Raptors give, but how much you guys give, because I think the basketball culture of the area is going to be what uplifts this team, not necessarily the logo design or even like the expansion draft roster to start out with. I think the hype around this team is going to really be built off of the support more than it's going to be built off of like, you know, little stuff like who's on the team or like designs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that the Toronto crowd does end up showing out. We do have a small arena they're going to be playing in. I know the last two times the WNBA just come to Toronto to play an exhibition game, they've sold out like an 18,000 person stadium, which is showing that Toronto fans want something like this in here. So
Yeah.
hopefully that translates to the WNBA team. I'm currently right now a season ticket like waitlist holder, so hopefully things that go well there. But yeah, hopefully the Raptors fans just show like, or just like Toronto sports fans just show out and they continue to support this team. I'm excited to see what like how this team is going to look once it actually starts developing. All we have is the logo right now, and we still don't really know the court, the branding, all that stuff. So we're gonna have to wait and see. But as of right now, I'm gonna hold like full opinions on it just because I think just the logo and team name is kind of again right in the middle, kind of mid. But hopefully it'll start to grow on me soon.
Definitely a work in progress, but hey, TV, like you said, we're sitting there with a wait list for season ticket holder. It definitely shows there is real anticipation for this team, and I'm sure everybody's excited about that. As long as that's kind of like the forefront of it all, I think everything starts, when the dust kind of settles, and the expansion draft for that team happens, and you guys select a coach, and there's a real infrastructure, it'll be a lot easier to kind of really rally around the team. When everything kind of feels like, remember, you guys got this, we all got this information via leak first too,
Yes,
right? So this
yeah,
is kind of something that didn't get the proper rollout that you would kind of like, even like that Golden State had to a certain extent, right? So the early stages of this, knowing that it's still a year away, is gonna
yeah.
kind of like slow down any of the real like hype around it. But I'm sure as we get closer and we have like, like I said, the names for like the coaching staff, the front office, an idea of how the roster is gonna be built, some of the prospects that could be at the top of the list for you guys and things of that nature. It'll I think it'll come around.
Yeah, work in progress for sure. But let us know what you guys think down below. Your early thoughts on the Toronto Temple, the branding and everything, the team name. Let us know what you guys think down below. Honestly, I think from like the reaction I've seen, Americans like it more than Canadians do right now. So I found that very interesting. But again, I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Let us know what you guys think down below.
Yeah.
But Jay, time to move over to the NBA, and it's
Mhm.
time for our quarterly report. We are like what 20 to 25 games into the season right now, so we're gonna
Mhm.
be looking at teams that have their stock really high right now, who we're gonna be buying stock in, teams that we are selling high on, teams that we don't know like how to feel, so we're kind of holding our stock on them, and also just kind of looking back at some old predictions and kind of like maybe like reeling back a few bad ones here and there. So it's gonna be like we're gonna be kind of like reviewing the first quarter of the season so far. But yeah, I'm gonna throw this question over to you. Which player slash team, as of this moment, are you buying stock in?
Man, the player that I'm buying stock in is a player that I've been hyped for a while, but is finally getting the burn and is also healthy. Jalen Johnson for the Atlanta Hawks is
I okay.
finally being unlocked, bro. We have talked about him on this podcast two or three times now about the kind of potential that he has for this team as a secondary shot creator, a secondary playmaker for this team. So far during the season, averaging 19.8 points, 10.1 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 50% from the floor. He's a dude that just is kind of playing with a different kind of pace this season. They've truly empowered him in a real way in the starting lineup at the small forward position, and it's kind of trickled down the roster, right? DeAndre Hunter is having a career year after just a season or two ago. We thought he was cooked. Like he
Moving
had
to
a
the
good,
bench has been like a
yeah.
godsend for him.
And that's been a beautiful thing that Jalen Johnson has been able to step up within this role because moving to the bench, like you mentioned for DeAndre Hunter, has unlocked a different part of his game as a primary ball handler that playing next to Trey Young maybe didn't assimilate well. But playing off the bench against secondary units has played out to a point where the Atlanta Hawks are a team we might have to really pay attention to in the Eastern
Mm.
Conference. Does that mean that I feel like they're going to be this like super dangerous playoff team or something like that? And challenge for a championship? No, not anything like that. But look at them just the other day. They had a very successful game on the road, hostile environment. Granted, an environment that Trey Young tends
He
to thrive
loves
in.
he loves MSG, bro. This man absolutely loves it there.
But they got the job done in MSG in a big NBA Cup game. And TV, look, similar to the Indiana Pacers last year, like this could be one of those teams that, like in the beginning of the season, we were a little iffy on, and then they put together this really strong NBA Cup run. And although that's not an indicator of how good or bad they are in conjunction to the NBA playoff structure, it does give you a little bit of confidence when you're a team that came out of nowhere and started to really kind of shape yourself in the middle in the beginning portion of the season during something like this where there are real stakes to an extent, right? I mean, obviously the cash prize at the end, also the bragging rights too, right? Of being able to say that you would be the reigning NBA Cup champion at the time. These are all things that can build real camaraderie within a roster, especially a youthful roster like the Atlanta Hawks, who are definitely one of the younger teams in the NBA, even with a Trey Young and a Clint Capella and guys like that who are a little bit more seasoned. You still have the Jalen Johnsons of the world. You still have the Onyeka Okongwus. You still have the Dyson Daniels of the world who are still young guys that are trying to really establish themselves within this league. This is a really good opportunity to continue to build their confidence. You could see it within Jalen Johnson through the first 20 plus games of the season. They want to see him truly as a on-ball creator, off-ball creator, a dude who can you can genuinely run offense through, and he has stepped up to the challenge. And I've loved how he's played so far this season. There were a lot of point forward ability kind of things that we knew he could do coming out of Duke. We never saw it though. Once he touched down in the league, we never saw it, or we saw like glimpses of it, shades here and there. This season, my boy is putting it together, and I can't be more than I can't be more happy about what I've seen from Jalen Johnson this year because this is a guy. Look, I'm a Tar Heels fan, but this guy right here. This is a Duke Blue Devil that I want to rally behind because this is a dude that I've been hype about since he got drafted.
No, he's been absolutely fantastic this year. He did miss a couple of games early on because of injury, but
Mm,
he's just been showing that he can kind of like John Collins. I wouldn't say John Collins on steroids, but it's like being that secondary option that Trae Young has been looking for, but from the wing position because they've tried it with DeJounte, they tried it with John Collins. Now you have someone who can legitimately play make, someone who has like the size and strength to kind of finish on the inside. Not the best 3-point shooter, but he's willing to take them. And he's efficient. He's been efficient this year. We were hoping to see kind of that jump from Jalen Johnson this year. And it turns out that he's able to do that. And it's not just empowering, Trey Young having the lowest usage ratio of his whole career,
yeah.
which is crazy thinking that he had DeJounte Murray beside him the last couple of years as well of
Right.
that. But Jalen Johnson has like shown that he can be, alongside a lot of other factors. Because again, you shouted out DeAndre Hunter. Shout out to Dyson Daniels as well, one of the best defenders in the league so far this year. But with Jalen Johnson being the second guy, giving kind of the perfect kind of play style to play next to a Trey Young, someone who's athletic, someone who can get to the inside, while Trey Young kind of operates from the perimeter. It's been working out really well for the Hawks, and now they're in the semifinals of the NBA Cup. They're 2 games over 500. Not too bad from Atlanta over there, man. It's looking pretty good
Yeah.
for them. And for a
Yeah.
first season that we thought was going to be a lost season, they've been looking really well.
Good point. That's another thing too, right? That's one of the bigger things to point out is this was a year that we were kind of a little iffy about what the Atlanta Hawks were going to do. There was all the trade talks around Trae Young and the San Antonio Spurs, Trae Young and the Orlando Magic, Trae Young and the Los Angeles Lakers, right? And we thought this was a year that we were going to have to be really concerned about the future of the Atlanta Hawks. But the Dyson Daniels acquisition, along with what Larry Nance Jr. has brought them off the bench as well from the size perspective, what Jalen Johnson has been able to kind of grow into offensively, what DeAndre Hunter has been able to grow into in his new role off the bench. It's been a really good story to know that, like, although the shakeup was one that we knew was going to have real ramifications on the future of this team, it's one that hasn't derailed them. If
For
anything,
sure.
it's actually created a new ability to empower guys that maybe weren't empowered before.
People know their roles now, and I think that was something that was a bit of a confusion the last couple of years. People know it, and
Yeah.
they're actually excelling in them. So great job, great choice with Jalen Johnson and just the Atlanta Hawks in general. That's they're having a great season.
Yeah.
For myself, the player I'm could potentially buy stock in right now, and I think that this guy isn't getting talked about at all enough. Jaren Jackson Jr. Man,
Mm.
Jaren Jackson Jr. I gotta shout him out, man, just because like the Grizzlies, first of all, are moving up in the standings. They're like third in the West right now, second in the West right now. They're having such a great year, and people are gonna talk about, people have been talking a lot about Jalen Wells, the new rookie. They're talking about the potential of Zach Edey. John Moran is obviously healthy this year, so he's been playing a lot of games. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is having a career year, Jay. 21 points per game, almost 6 rebounds per game, still 1.9 blocks per game. And Jay, he's averaging the least amount of fouls in his career. Look at that. I think that Jaren Jackson Jr. has been an all-star or borderline sort of all-star just because he's has this Grizzlies team. Even when Jaw was out, he still had this team, treading above water. They still were winning a bunch of games with him as the lead guy, being an anchor of a top 5 defense, contributing to a top 5 offense. And people are like, again, they're not really talking about the Grizzlies as much, but Desmond Bain is not being a 20-point per game scorer so far this year. He's kind of struggled from the field, only shooting 42% from the field, 32% from three. But that hasn't really mattered that much because obviously with the people stepping up from the supporting cast, but also Jaren Jackson Jr. stepped in right into that number 2 spot very cleanly, still being the anchor of that defense. I think that people are not giving him enough, even All Star buzz in my opinion. He's been just as big of a contributor to this season as John Moran has, and I think that right now he might be a first time. I'm like believing in him as another All Star season for him. So I'm gonna trying to buy stock in him right now.
No, I think you make a really good point. I think when you talk about the Memphis Grizzlies this season, there are a lot of other storylines that come up before we start to talk about Jaren Jackson Jr., right? Like we talk about the John Morant element in terms of the on and off the court stuff, and with not necessarily on and off like in terms of anything he's doing, but the fact that he's been on and off the floor pretty consistently so far this season due to
Mhm.
injury concerns. The other thing that would come up is the Memphis Grizzlies depth, right? We've been able to see a Jay Huff, we've been able to see a Scottie Pippen Jr., Jalen Wells, guys of that nature really play at a high level and kind of make up the ground for the fact that this team is maybe not necessarily as like talented, but they are clearly like a very strong group of individuals in terms of playing as a unit. Even Zach Edey as a rookie, kind of like the storyline around him fitting into like the Steven Adams role was a really big conversation at the beginning of the year. Jaren Jackson Jr. kind of gets buried beneath all of that. And I think it's very important to highlight that clearly last season was not as much of a lost season as we thought. Because one thing for the Memphis Grizzlies that we didn't really appreciate as much last year, and I think is going to be very important for them this year, is the on ball offensive creation reps that Jaren Jackson Jr. was forced to have last season with all of their injuries that they had. It has put him in a it's put him in a completely different space as an efficient shooter, and it's put him in a completely different space as a real secondary playmaker, both for himself and for others. The fact that he was kind of forced into a more high usage role last season, I think has now kind of made it a lot easier for him to assimilate as the Grizzlies' real second best player on that side of the floor. We always knew that Jaren Jackson Jr. had real defensive capabilities. This is a guy that just a couple of seasons ago we had him top 3 in the defensive player of the year race, like because he was just that versatile, one of the
Yeah,
better shot
he won
blockers in the
Defensive
league.
Player of the Year.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. A couple seasons ago, he even won one. So this is a guy that has been relatively consistent within that side of the floor. The offense has always been the biggest question because he's had years where he's been insane from 3 point line, and then years where it's been a little off. The mid range hasn't really been that great, and then there's years where the mid range is damn near automatic. This is a year where I think he's kind of coming more into himself offensively, and you balance that with the fact that he has clearly defensive player of the year caliber potential on that side of the floor. He's starting to become the most well-rounded version of himself, and it's going to be under discussed because the Grizzlies are not like a team that's like discussed on national media often. But I think that when it comes playoff time, this development for Jaren Jackson is going to be a big storyline for how they stand out in a postseason setting.
Yeah, 100%. And I think if he can like become this number two guy in the offensive end, it just opens up the game so much more for someone like John Moran. And eventually, when Desmond Bain gets back into it, another thing I want to talk about is he's doing this in like 28 minutes per game. Like he's doing this in like
Yeah,
limited minutes, even less than his like All Star year a couple years ago and his
yeah.
DPOY year. So man, it's looking really good for Jaren Jackson Jr. so far. Obviously, there's going to be some injury concerns, especially from the last 2 years. But if he could stay healthy, all NBA, all defensive sort of all defensive team at the end of the year, potential All Star. Well, I just don't want you guys to see that below, but I think that this is going to be it's going to be a very good consistent year for Jaren Jackson Jr. And I've been loving what I'm seeing so far to start it off.
Yep.
100%. All right, Jay. Next question for our quarterly report: which player slash team are you selling high on at the moment?
So I kind of did all players for our quarterly report, and the player that I'm selling high on is Tyler Hero. I
Oh,
understand the hype around Tyler Hero this season, having a career year, 24.2 points per game, nearly 5.5 rebounds, five assists. Is shooting the ball relatively well, 42% from three on nearly 10 attempts per game. So, like, I mean, you definitely can't fight the fact that he has been insane as an offensive engine for the Miami Heat. They've desperately needed it as well,
they've needed
considering the
that.
fact that they just have not gotten as offensively aggressive of a Bam Adebayo, and Jimmy Butler is clearly playing in limbo because he's a guy that is on the trade block for a reason and is in a real contract year. So it's been a little weird around Miami outside of like the productivity of Tyler Hero so far this season. But that's kind of why I want to sell high on him. It's because he's a guy that I think he fits that archetype of players that we always talk about, right? Like it's like him. Jordan Poole is like another guy that's kind of in that lane. Tyrese Maxey used to be in that lane, not so much as not as much now. But those guys who kind of like are the fill 'em up score first types that like, you wonder about the sustainability of them being able to play at that kind of level, over the course of a real 82 games. And like Tyler Hero has always kind of felt like that guy that could, give you 20 points a game, but because of his, how easy it is to pick on him on defense, the fact that he seems to thrive better against second units, even though again this year he's definitely improved. You just kind of wonder, man, right? Like you got like Tyler Hero is one of those players where you kind of wonder like when the tires are gonna fall off. Like Miami I feel like Miami is only gonna be able to get away with playing through him this much for but so long. And like I think on top of that, when I say sell, obviously I don't mean like trade Tyler Hero. If anybody needs to be on a real trade block for Miami, it would be Jimmy Butler just given his situation. But I
Yeah.
think when I say sell and I say sell high, it's especially because for in this case, I just don't know if what Tyler Hero is doing so far this season is sustainable. You have people having real conversations about whether or not Tyler Hero should be in all-star consideration this year. Like I don't think that's gonna stick, bro.
I mean, like if you look at this first quarter of the season, he definitely should be up there with like
He
the
should
way
be
he's playing.
he should be up there, but that's why I say sell high because
Yeah,
right
for sure.
now
Yeah.
he's having a hell of a season worth really having the conversation around. But again, that goes to having to pay attention to the sustainability of it. I'm selling high because I think this is the highest he's going to reach. I genuinely feel like to the when we get closer to the All-Star break, I don't think that Tyler Hero is still going to be a guy that we're having that kind of conversation around.
Yeah. I know what you mean by trying to sell high on Tyler Hero. Like I get it, but for me, like when I see Tyler Hero, especially because I've been like whenever I see like Miami Heat games, he feels like the only guy who's actually generating offense. Like guys, the Miami Heat have not looked good on that side of the ball. Let's be completely
Nope.
honest. But Tyler Hero, I feel like what's happening with him compared to other years is that he's not so much like being the ball dominant guard there. He's like moving
Mm,
a lot more off ball, getting the threes that he feels most comfortable in. And let's be honest, he's a tough shot maker. I swear,
true.
like at the end of the day, I think like I'm not saying that this is. I guess that's a good thing that you're saying so high, just because I don't know if he's gonna maintain that 24 point per game, 42% from three on 10 3-pointers a game. That's
Yeah, see what I mean?
ridiculous.
Yeah, like there's certain
But
stuff that when you look at the overall productivity, like some stuff just doesn't feel sustainable. He's like you said, 42% on 10 attempts per game. Like these are things that like do you like if it comes down to if it regresses to the mean and he kind of settles around 37% on 8 attempts per game, for example, right? That completely changes the viewpoint of Tyler Hero offensively for this team. Not by much, but it does affect the viewpoint of how you see him throughout the season. 42% on 10 attempts per game. That's like that's high level stuff. That's like that's the Steph Curry's, that's the how Buddy Hield started the season off. Like those that type of productivity. And I just don't know if he's that kind of guy. That kind of
honestly, like
shooter, especially.
I'm honestly more concerned about him maintaining the 48% from the field. I think that's probably gonna go
Mm,
down to about 45%. The 3-point shooting, I think, like if anything, is gonna stay around 40, just because like he actually is like an elite 3-point shooter. Um, but yeah, no, he's been absolutely fantastic this year. I don't know how that changes if Jimmy Butler does get traded eventually, if that trade does go through. But shout out to Tyler Hero. He's been having such a great year. I wouldn't say I'd be selling high. I just think that he's probably like in his most comfortable days offensively. And now that he has a healthy team, at least like the eyes aren't fully on him like it was when Jimmy Butler was injured or
yeah.
stuff like that. So I mean, the offense is going through him, but he's continuing to hit buckets. Let's see how long this could be all like how long this can last for the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this is one of those players that I don't necessarily say sell high, like in a super negative way. It's just kind of looking at the stats and kind of wondering like how sustainable certain stuff is. Like I said, it's not even just the 42% on 10 attempts per game. He's had a true shooting percentage of 63.2. That's the highest of his career, and it's like not even like close. Like the next highest of his career is 56.6. So like the efficiency that he is like shooting the ball at right now is like completely unprecedented compared to like how he's been in previous seasons. If he comes back and regresses to the mean as a 3-point shooter down to like 37 point on 32 37%, if he regresses back towards the mean true shooting wise and it's closer to 56 57% as opposed to 63, like I think that definitely changes how unstoppable of an offensive player he kind of looks right now. And I think that, like I said, I think a little bit of the shine comes off. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's selling high because I think this is the best he's easily playing at the best basketball of his career right now. But I just don't think it's gonna last.
100%. So yeah, I definitely get your point on Tyler Hero. But for this one, this is the only one where I actually chose a team for this.
Okay.
A team I think you should sell high on right now, barring if they make, I don't know, like it depends on the trade if they do end up making a trade. The Golden State Warriors. I think they really sell high on
Oh,
them.
interesting.
And look, how it's high on this Golden State Warrior team. I think
Yeah,
that
that's why
people
I'm
still think
surprised.
there's a chance that they could be a kind of a championship contender, maybe like around that, like maybe make another deep playoff run.
Yeah.
But I think this D'Anthony Melton injury like means a lot more than people like want to like lead on to believe.
Yeah.
And what like kind of this like kind of like represents to me the D'Anthony Melton injury is that Golden State has gone away with this like 12-man, 10-man rotation for a lot of this year.
Yeah, yeah.
And just the sustainability of all that is just something that like you can already see it. It's come back down to earth a little bit. Buddy
Yeah.
Hield is still having a great season, but his lightning fire start has not really sustained itself.
Right.
You're still having a good Steph Curry here. You're still getting good production here and there, but playing these 12 guys and like on a night-to-night basis, you're still a top four offense, but you just means that you're not having your best players on the court like enough. Steph Curry right now this season is averaging what is it like only under 31 minutes a game. This is your best player on your team. This needs to change. And I love that you're giving chances to Lindy Waters, to giving chances to Pat Spencer. But unless like if this was like resulting in wins now, I would be a lot more comfortable with it. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Like it's like the Warriors have kind of fell back down to earth that way a little bit. I I would say sell now unless they end up making the trade. Obviously, the whole
Mm.
thing is about if Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a long-term piece there. People are saying, "Oh, he's finally starting now because they want to up his trade value," but I don't think that this current roster as construction can be a championship contender. There's room for improvement, and that could possibly mean trading Jonathan Kuminga. But as of right now, I'm selling high on them because I think that I wouldn't say they would like regress back to what they were last year, but I'm
Mm.
gonna say that they're probably not in that like realm of teams that we thought they were in like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
No, I think that's a good spot to pick up, like of like just what they've done so far this season, like getting out before the pan gets too hot, right? Where they've just played so well in the beginning portion of the season. And if you can already slowly see the decline, you kind of want to get out of there before it really starts to plummet. And this is a team that you have to wonder. I think it was super important that you mentioned the 12-man rotation thing because, like, that's cute when it works. Right?
Yeah,
Memphis knows this directly. Memphis is another team that's like living off that in the opposite direction right now. Like it's cute when it works, but when it doesn't, and you start having to point fingers and wondering, like, yo, why is somebody like you mentioned, like Steph Curry, like not playing more than 31 minutes a game? On the flip side, you notice we didn't have any arguments about Jaren Jackson Jr., the second best player on the Memphis Grizzlies, playing 28 minutes a game, right? So it's different. It's a different interpretation based off productivity. This team, like you mentioned beforehand, the DeAnthony Melton injury has really hurt them. The lack of another on-ball creator offensively consistently is still something that's still really hurting them. We thought Buddy Hield would be able to make up for that with the way he was shooting the ball in the beginning of the season. But I think another thing we didn't take into account is that Buddy Hield kind of does do this pretty regularly. Like Buddy Hield has this weird thing about his career where, especially when he initially gets traded to a team, he usually is like red hot on fire. It's almost like he's just like so excited to be on a new roster. And then once he kind of settles within his role, he cools off a little bit, starts to kind of become more of a liability because you realize that he's not shooting the ball as well as he started out. You know that he's not a plus defender. And then he kind of comes back around where we're wondering, like, dang, do we need to trade Buddy? Do we need to figure out something to be able to change his role so he's not as prominent on our team? You know what I mean? And then he gets
yeah.
traded again, and then he goes back into his hot streak. He's one of those kind of players, and he's kind of settled in right now. And I'm sure Golden State Warrior fans are kind of wondering, like, hey, yo, maybe like maybe he's not the guy that we like really want to attach ourselves to long term for this season if it means that we can trade him to be able to get a much more valuable asset or a much better player depending on what the package looks like. So Buddy Hield is probably a guy that's gonna be at least in talks for most of these like trade scenarios as you mentioned beforehand, as matching salary or whatever it may be, if it really comes down to that. And I think the other thing too for Golden State is like we haven't talked about this a whole bunch so far this season because it's still just so early, but like the West is still as packed as you think it is.
Yeah, no, yeah, they're in a spot where if they like end up like having a bad week, they could drop to like ninth.
Yeah, like the West is still as packed as you think it is. So the fact that the Golden State Warriors, like you said beforehand, have had this weird skid over the last 10 games, 3-7, and just kind of look a little discombobulated. This is a team that I do kind of start to worry about, and I do feel like they're one of the five teams. We're going to talk about this a lot more next week, so stay tuned for that. But they're one of the five teams that I think have to make a trade if they want us to continue to view them as real championship contenders this season.
Yeah.
Like they're one of like there's certain teams that like making a certain trade would be like a luxury to put them over the top. This is a team that I think is one of the five teams in my tier that I think need to make a trade to get back into that conversation legitimately.
That's what I'm saying. I would say sell high on unless
Yeah,
they make that trade. And I'm sorry, but
definitely.
I'm gonna tell you right now, Jonathan Kaminga can't be with this team long term. He just doesn't fit. He just doesn't fit. I think he could
I
be a
feel
good
you.
player and like in another system, but for what Steve Kerr wants, for what this team needs, It's just not going to work out for Jonathan Kuminga. I'm sorry
Agreed.
I'm sorry for Warriors fans who think that he could still be kind of that bridge between new school and old school. He just won't be. I think you need to get him while he's still unsigned to that new contract, so he can discuss that new contract with a new team, and then you can get an all-star level player in exchange for him. There are definitely
Mhm.
like teams who are willing to do that. So I would say hold off on that for now. I would say sell high if you don't think they're gonna trade, but if they do make a trade, they could definitely put themselves back in the situation where maybe you could invest down the line. Who knows? But yeah,
Right.
that's the team I'm selling high on as of
Yeah.
right now. Jay, other question here: what player and team are you holding stock in? And what I mean by this is a team or player that's kind of like, kind of floundering right now. Maybe they're having not as great of a start. Maybe they're just finally starting to get it going. But you want to hold it and wait for higher value. What player or team do you have for that?
Okay, so this is going to be a really interesting name because I think that a lot of people are so on the opposite end of the spectrum from me that I think they're going to actually take this as like a WTF moment of the podcast. The guy that I'm going to hold stock in for right now that I think I'm going to actually have to hold this stock for a while in order to be proven right is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray,
I like that choice. I really like
yeah.
that choice.
Yeah, I think he's a guy. If you look at him, I had to do some digging, but historically, Jamal Murray has been known to be a slow starter in the first 2 to 3 months of the NBA season.
100%, but that's also
Yeah,
because he kind of comes into seasons injured.
yeah, which is
Yeah,
always it seems to always including this season,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And yes, is he having one of the worst seasons of his career? Yes. 17.8 points per game is his lowest since his second season in the NBA. 6.2 assists, 4 rebounds per game, only 80% from the free throw line, 33% from the three-point line on similar attempts to last season. It's 5.8 attempts last season. He shot 42.5%. This season, 5.8 attempts per game, 33.3%, right? So like he's definitely not playing his best brand of basketball right now.
This
You
might
have
be at
a
his lowest point. This might
easily
be at his
and
lowest.
that's why I think so many people would probably disagree with me in terms of holding like standing pat on the Jamal Murray stock, but I think that's exactly why I believe in it even more that it's something that like I said, I'm going to have to really clutch this. I'm going to have to clutch these pearls hard. Like I'm going to have to really hold this stock all the way up until the end of the season into the postseason. Like this is going to be one of those stocks that I have to just be okay with seeing ebb and flow throughout the season without being worried about losing too much in the process. But this is a guy who naturally starts slow. Again, like you mentioned beforehand, tends to come into the season injured, dealing with nagging injuries that tends to kind of affect the way he plays in the beginning. He's a dude that I think as the season progresses and as the Nuggets kind of start to really find their footing, they're a team that's gotten away with murder so far because Nikola Jokic is just that damn good.
He is everything to that team.
But they're just so at this point, they're basically just waiting for Jamal to pick up the pace. That's it. That's the truth of the matter. Now, granted, there's other things that they really could use, like Michael Porter Jr. as a knockdown shooter has been something that's kind of been like a catch 22 to watch so far this season. Aaron Gordon has not been nearly as good this season as he's been the last season or definitely the season prior. So that could be another thing that kind of comes to the middle. Russell Westbrook has been a steady force. Same thing with Christian Brown, but like they're two guys that like obviously you can't look to them offensively as much. More so Christian Brown. You can Russell Westbrook, you could be like relatively dependable on, but like the efficiencies, you know how the efficiency numbers be.
Mhm.
They're really waiting for Jamal Murray to like kind of pick up the pace. I do genuinely believe that as we get closer to like February, March, he's gonna find a groove and we're gonna start talking about this team differently. Right now, everybody's on the like, this team is imploding. It's Nikola Jokic or bust. Jamal Murray is overpaid. What the heck is this roster doing now that KCP got the walk? Now that Bruce Brown got the walk, this team just looks like they're deteriorating before our very eyes. Even we had this conversation on the pod over the summer of like, dang, it feels like this team is just like slowly losing Jenga blocks brick by
Yeah.
brick, and we're just waiting for them to fall over. But there's also that part that's just like Nikola Jokic is so good that we're just waiting for one more player to pop for this team. And we're right back to viewing them as like one of the top teams in the Western Conference in terms of championship equity. And I think Jamal Murray is going to catch his stride. So I'm going to hold out on this one. If I'm wrong, I'll just take it to the grave. But
Oh,
I think that I'm going to be right. I'm hoping that I'm going to be right. I'm going to stand pat with this stock and hope that Jamal Murray around February, March bounces up to more of like a 21, 22 point per game score like we're used to, increases the 3-point efficiency, and gets that two-man game with Nikola Jokic back up and popping as one of the more dangerous actions in the NBA.
they need it. They
Yeah.
absolutely need it right now. And thank you for giving some hope to a Canadian basketball fan, Jamal Murray, because
Yeah.
because dating back to the Olympics, we
Yeah.
know how that went with Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
Now for this season, I'm not even putting the blame on Michael Porter Jr. this year. He honestly has been their second best player. I can't even
True.
hate. Aaron Gordon has been injured. His 3-point shot is slowly coming back, so I can't even blame him that much.
Mm,
Jamal Murray is the guy I'm like singling out here. So the fact that you're holding stock in him gives me a little bit of hope. But at the
yeah.
same time, man, Jamal, you really gotta step up. If anyone's gonna have to like alleviate some of the pressure on Yoke, it's gonna be Jamal Murray. So
Yeah.
in terms of holding out, I mean, at this point you have no choice. The Nuggets need this from him, and he needs it for his career because like this is only like the first year of his extension, bro. This is like there's like 4 more years of this. If he
Yeah.
get back to like what like his play, I wouldn't even say his playoff version, but even like 80% of that,
Mm,
and we're cooking in the regular season. You know what I mean? So
yeah, for sure.
I like that choice. I'm hoping you're right because so far this year, like I have a lot of I have a lot of quarrels with Jamal Murray so far this year.
Yeah, like I said, I know it's going against the grain a lot, and that's why I had to preface it at the beginning because I know that's gonna be one that, like, if it doesn't come to fruition, that's gonna come back to bite me. Because that's also gonna significantly hurt the Nuggets, like you mentioned beforehand. Like if Jamal Murray doesn't catch his stride, and he's still the guy that we've seen so far during the first 20 plus games of the season, like this Nuggets team is not as lethal in a postseason setting as like we would expect them to be, especially when Nikola Jokic is having this like ungodly season, like absolutely unhinged season on both sides of the floor. Well, mainly offensively, obviously, right? But like he's also
Yeah,
been like a plus defender so far this year and stuff like that. But obviously, offensive production wise, he has been like I
yeah,
don't even know how to I don't even know how to like really explain it anymore because it seems like every single year we say this, but somehow this year is better than any other year we've really kind of like locked in on how productive he's been. But like
yeah,
I said, like Jamal Murray, like he is the other piece of the puzzle that like takes this team from like dangerous in the Western Conference to like, yo, they could go back to the chip.
yeah, 100%. They're gonna definitely need that from him if they want to be still stay as contenders.
Yeah.
For myself here, though, the one person I'm holding stock in, and this is definitely Homer pick. I can't believe we have two Canadians here, bro. In terms of like for this question, but I'm gonna go with RJ Barrett. I'm
That's
gonna
a
be holding.
great one. That's a great one.
I People have their concerns about him, and rightfully so. Jay, I'm gonna tell you his home and away split so far this year.
Okay.
At home, he's averaging 28 points per game. He's by the way, he's played 11 home games, 11 away games. So he's
Okay.
averaged at home 28 points per game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 52% from the field, 81% from
Okay.
three, 39% from the 3-point line. He has been a top 10 player in the East this year, playing at home. Now I'm going to flip it to you on the other side. This is his stats on the road:
Okay.
19 points per game, 6 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 40% from the field, 30% from three, 59% the free throw line, 47% true shooting compared to 63% at home. Jay,
Wow.
with the way I spoke about here, you might have thought I've been talking about two different players. This is the same
Yeah.
man. This
Yeah.
is the same man. 11
That
games
home
at home,
cookie hit different, TV. That home cookie hit different.
bro. They're Toronto fans are like know about this warmer place like here in Toronto called Osmos, and he said like when he came back to Toronto that was the place he missed the most. Bro, we need Osmos traveling with this man to the U.S. because we need some sort of like that home cookie that he gets here in Canada. We need to have that on the road. Now the reason I'm holding stock in him is because with Scotty Barnes out for a couple weeks,
Mhm.
I think that he could still be an all-star. I still think he could be an all-star.
Okay.
Almost 24 points per game again, 47% from the field. He needs to get his away averages up, but he's someone who's just improved in so many aspects of his game. Highest assist rate, low turnovers, better has one of his best seasons rebounding. He is a borderline all-star in the East, and I think that if you could just get those away averages just slightly higher, we could be having those like real conversations about him being an all-star in the East. That's why I'm holding on, and I just hope that going into the new year, we can just see those away splits just go up just a little bit, because I know he can perform at home. I've seen enough games of that, but we just need his away splits to go a little bit higher. But I'm holding my stock on RJ Barrett.
Yeah, no, the reason why I said I feel like this is such a great pick is because like I feel like RJ's season has just been completely underrated. I think you mentioned this beforehand in terms of him being like considered like a borderline all-star in the Eastern Conference. I think that's like a real conversation to be had. Like if we're talking about Tyler Hero as a guy that's potentially in all-star convos, I think RJ Barrett at least deserves to be in the conversation with the way he's played so far this season. And I think it's also just been an underrated storyline, and people don't talk about this aspect of the NBA very much. But the on ball creation, both as a passer and scorer for RJ Barrett over the last 2 seasons with Toronto, starting with last year and the beginning portion of this season, he's just become much more like free flowing as an offensive creator, especially when it comes to like his feel for the game. This season in particular, averaging the highest assist and highest assist rate of his career. Another thing that I thought was super important is like he's attacking the cup. He's getting to the free throw line, the highest
He
of his
is
career as well.
he is third in the league in drives per in paint touches per game. That's how
Hmm.
much he's attacking the paint. This guy like has no fear going in there, and this is like against players like Giannis and like Jokic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's third in the league.
TV, and I'm glad you brought that stat up because I thought that was super important to kind of like double down on the fact that like not only is he getting to the cup in terms of just like drawing fouls, he is literally making sure that paint touches is a big part of his offensive arsenal because I think he understands that he's not like a knockdown shooter. I think he gets that he's not a guy that necessarily is going to stretch the floor in the same way, but he is willing to take them. Again, taking a career high 5.9 3-point attempts per game. That's not an insanely high career high, right? Just a couple of seasons ago, he was at 5.8. So it's not like he's like doing anything otherworldly in terms of raising his 3-point volume, but he is willing to shoot them. But I think the main thing is, especially on a smaller team like the Toronto Raptors that tends to play more like wing heavy, his driving game is something that creates real opportunity for them to open up shooting opportunities, to open up other driving lanes for other players, to open up the mid-range game for players off ball like a Grady Dick, right? So
Hmm.
there's these different aspects of RJ's game over the last 2 seasons, and more particularly this year, where some of the little nuanced things, paint touches, moving the ball more, making quicker decisions, it's really unlocked a part of his game that, again, I feel like people don't talk about the developmental side of the NBA enough. The last 2 seasons with the Toronto Raptors, RJ has really come into his own when it comes to actually creating efficient offense, not just for
Yes,
himself,
yes,
not just for himself, because that was something we knew was going to have to come along. Because RJ efficiency was the biggest thing with the Knicks, like for the longest, in terms of like him being able to become more efficient, especially as a mid-range shooter. But the efficiency for him has gotten better. But I think the efficiency in terms of creating good decisions for the players around him as well, good opportunities for the players around him as well. This is the best we've ever seen RJ in terms of really being not only a good top level scorer, but also being a good connector. And that's going to be huge for a team like Toronto that doesn't necessarily have like this distribution point guard, right? Doesn't have anybody that's like this go. I don't think you guys have a go-to player yet. Like I think Scotty Barnes is great, but he's still more of a two-way wing mold. You guys don't necessarily have a go-to guy crunch time. This is the dude we're running offense through. So the fact that RJ Barrett can be another significant connector on this team, it creates a facsimile of that by having a play style that's like anybody can help us close, but he's a guy that we know is willing to take the big shots when the time comes. So I've been really proud of what RJ has done so far this season. I'm so glad that you guys have been able to maximize him in Toronto. I'm with you, man. Somebody got to bring the Swarmer with him because I mean, like you said, it sounded like you were talking about two totally different players right there, and it goes to show you that, like I was joking about earlier, man, that home cooking hit different. It hit
That
different, bro.
it's different, bro. I mean, the fact that he's like top 10, like a top 7 scorer in the league when he's at home compared to like under 20 points per game on the road is absolutely crazy. So like, yeah, I still like believe in RJ. I just need those things to go up a little bit, and I think his stock is going to be back up there, man. He's great. He's been a great player this year. I just like need to see a bit more of a balance there, but he's been awesome, and I need more people to know that he has been such a good player for the Raptors this year, and he deserves more love. So shout out to RJ, man. Jay, final question for the quarterly.
Okay.
One prediction from the preseason that you want to go back on. This is your chance. This is like your, let's redo this. Let me just like pull my hat out of this. What's that one prediction?
Yeah, so I kind of had to go into the archive for this one and kind of really narrow down some of the predictions we made because obviously during the 21 questions portion of the podcast during the summer, like there were a lot of different things that we had takes on, whether it was like most improved player, coaches on the hot seat, rookie of the year, different things of that nature. And so, of course, the first thing I kind of thought of was like, well, I said I thought Zachary Ricochet was going to win rookie of the year just due to like opportunity on the Atlanta Hawks, right, compared to other rookies so far coming into the league. And that one was clearly wrong, just based off of the fact that, like, Dalton Connect has got more PT with the Lakers than we expected. Jared McCain has played way more than we thought he was going to play. Jalen Wells has been really good, right? Like, there's been a handful of rookies that have actually produced at a really high level. So, but I don't want to pick that one because I think that I feel like that's really easy to say, oh, Zachary Richardson is probably not going to win Rookie of the Year with the way this season has started out. The the one that I'm a little the one that I'm gonna pull back on is that I said that the coach I believe is on the hottest seat in the NBA was Doc Rivers with the Milwaukee Bucks. And with the way the season was going in the beginning a little bit, it was looking like we was gonna have to start wondering for a minute. You feel me? It was looking a little ugly. But I'm gonna change that name. And I I didn't think this may even be premature, but I think the guy we're gonna have to start really paying attention to, staying on brand with a lot of the Toronto stuff we've been talking about lately, is Nick Nurse. I have to be honest with you. This Philly team, I don't care if Joel Embiid has been out. I don't care if Paul George has missed time. I understand that Maxey has missed time as well. This this roster is just not as bad. It's not as bad as this team looks, bro. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, 100%. Yeah.
This team is not this team from a roster construction standpoint. And I get it. I get it. Part of my take on this is that I believed I can take I can take the L. It depends on how you view it, but I can take the L at least this far into the season and say I believed that the Philadelphia 76ers had easily the best standout and most productive offseason in terms of talent acquisition of any team in the NBA this past offseason. And so far, that's not looking to be the case. And I'm willing to take the L on that. But I also would like to say that when you think about the concept of the roster that they tried to build over the summer, this team is just not as bad as it looks on a night to night basis. It just is not. I don't care if Joel Embiid's on the floor. I don't care if Paul George misses time. I don't care if Tyrese Maxey misses time. I also think that when this team finally gets all three of them healthy, that's still not going to mean very much just because we're going to have a similar conversation to how we used to talk about the LA Clippers all the time of, well, they didn't really get the reps with one another, right? Continuity was kind of low because guys were in and out of the roster throughout the season. Like we're having Paul George is living through the LA Clippers on the opposite end of the coast, man. Like he's on the East Coast doing Clippers reruns right now. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? But I think that still comes down to the fact that, like, I think Nick Nurse has really gotten away with the fact that, like, Tyrese Maxey burst onto the scene in a way that I don't think people expected. I think Nick Nurse has gotten away with murder that Daryl Morey took a chance on Tyrese Maxey and allowed the growth of Tyrese to open up an opportunity to trade James Harden away. And I think Philly fans need to really give James Harden an apology, by the way. Not
Mhm.
just because he just not just because of how not just because of how productive he's been so far this season for the LA Clippers, but because it seems that although James Harden might have been a contributor to the problems in the Sixers locker room, I think we're starting to learn that he was definitely not the root of the issue. He was not the weed plant you had to pull out in order to let the real soil sprout out the kind of flowers that we're looking for. You know what I mean? I don't think that James Harden, I think this season is reflecting that maybe James Harden was more of a scapegoat than we really gave it credit at the time. And so I think Philly fans need to really apologize to James Harden because I think this guy was on to something when he started to kind of make some ruckus in the Philly locker room and started wondering about, like, for example, the commitment to the game from a Joel Embiid
Yeah.
who earlier this season got called out by Tyrese Maxey for not attending meetings, and Stephen
Mhm.
A. Smith going on record for saying that people have told him and reported to him that Joel Embiid has changed since he got the bag, right? These different kind of conversations. So maybe James wasn't crazy. He might have went further than most superstars would, but maybe he wasn't as crazy as we thought. But I think that all comes down to management of the talent in the room and who's supposed to be the guy that does that? The coach. Nick Nurse is a guy that I think we got to start paying a little bit more attention to.
Yeah, no, yeah, the Doc Rivers one, at least like over the past like 15 games or so, he's at least secured his job for at least the time being, at least this season as well.
Right.
He's done
Yeah.
good. And honestly, in my opinion, for the same thing with Nick Nurse, this year feels like kind of such a hectic year that no matter what happens, there's gonna be like that kind of Teflon around Nick Nurse saying, if this happens another year, then we're gonna have these
That's
conversations.
a good
As of
point.
right
I think
now,
that's a good point. Yeah.
since there's so much chaos going on this year,
Yeah.
probably not. I'm still gonna stick with Willie Green though. I still think that Willie Green's my guy in the hottest seat.
Oh, I
Right there.
think that's fair. I think the one counterpoint that I have to you about the chaos with the Philadelphia 76ers is I would also say this is probably the weakest that the top part of the Eastern Conference has been in quite a while.
Yeah, and that
And
means
this is
that means it'll take 2 weeks for the 76ers to get back in it.
at least in theory, right? In
Yeah, it's
theory,
weird.
this would be a this is the kind of season where Philly should be able to fight back. So their ability to fight back into the top 4 is going to be the most important thing for his job security because I think that Nick Nurse, like I said, and I think you made a good point. Maybe this isn't the season that gets him booted, but maybe this is the season that gets him truly put under the microscope. And I think
Yes.
that's more of like one of those things where like you start to wonder like that seat is getting a lot hotter as the games go by. And in a Eastern Conference like this one, where like I said, the top of the East, once you get past Boston and what Cleveland has been, and Milwaukee's kind of coming around, so I'll give them that as
New
well.
York in a sense, yeah.
New York, in a sense, as well. Their defense is still atrocious, but
Hmm.
like, hey, whatever. Orlando is injured, right? Their two best players have been out. Paulo longer than Franz,
Yeah.
obviously. Unironically, both to have the same injury as
Yeah.
well, which is crazy. But yeah, the Eastern Conference past like the first 3 teams that we think of, there's nobody that's really definitive for that fourth spot. The Knicks are probably the team that's seating there, but I wouldn't say they're like comfortably seating there. So
Yeah.
this is a year where I think Philly needs to get their ish together before it gets too late because this is kind of one of those seasons that like they're gonna really look back and like kick themselves in the back if they like realize like, yo, this was a crazy squandered opportunity that we missed out on.
Yeah. 100%. That's a good choice though. And at least it's something to definitely look at going forward. If there's one prediction for me in terms of like pulling back, I said the Pelicans were going to be the most beloved team in the league.
Yeah, I do remember the yeah.
They can't even be on the court for them to like even like us be able to watch. I can't even watch this team right now. Literally the
Dude.
complete opposite. I'm pulling that. I'm pulling that away. Right now for me it's the Houston Rockets. It's the most beloved team. I'm gonna pull
Yeah.
that all the way back and
Yeah.
say because this Pelicans this season has been a disaster. We talk about the 76ers. It's basically 76ers out east, except the 76ers actually we've seen them move to the second round. We still haven't seen there's now we have discussions about whether Zion Williamson should no longer be part of their future plans. This is how bad it's gone for the Pelicans. So I would say that this Pelicans experiment, not only am I going to pull back saying they're going to be the most beloved team, I think it might be time for them to kind of really take a look at this roster and see who like who we should build around, or if we have to potentially not start over, but really rearrange some stuff.
TV, we said it at the very beginning of the season. If the basketball gods had to send you a message that something needed to happen, what better way than to knock off the whole dang roster? TV, we don't know whether or not we're watching New Orleans or their Birmingham G League squad on a night to night basis. That's how injured this team is, dude. Like, if there was any indication that, yo, this isn't gonna work, the basketball gods are throwing a lightning rod down and saying, look, dude, stop. Just
Basically,
stop.
basically,
TV, it was reported this week that Brandon Ingram turned down, what was it, $50 million a year for a contract extension, or a $50 million contract extension in order to pursue a trade request? Brandon Ingram is a guy that we don't even know what the hell team he fits on if he got traded.
Yeah, it's becoming to the point with this Pelicans team where we we went from saying that this is probably the worst it's ever been for all those years of chaos, and they've gone through years of chaos. This is probably the worst it's been.
Yeah, so it's I mean, anything you can name that could go wrong for an NBA franchise, at least on the court, obviously, right? On the court, that could go wrong has gone wrong for the New Orleans Pelicans.
Yes,
Across the board. Your new and improved trade acquisition, who was supposed to kind of help shore up not only the offense, but definitely bring more of a defensive identity in DeJounte Murray. He got injured within the first week of the season.
first game.
Excuse me. Yeah, he got injured day one. He got the Gordon Hayward treatment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We came into the season and Trey Murphy was already down for 3 weeks to kick the year off. You know what I mean? This team needs to call it, bro. It's time to throw in the white flag, bro. It's time to wave the white flag and dip out and just figure out what the heck you want to. It's crazy to think that once upon a time, this team had a treasure trove of assets in young talent, Lakers picks, you know what I mean? All of that great stuff. And we were looking at them as one of the teams with one of the brightest futures in the NBA just because of the opportunity they would have. To now being a team that they might be one of only 4 teams in the whole league that we think needs a real reset. And I say that, but 2 of the teams I'm even thinking of have already hit the reset button. The Washington Wizards, for the most part, I think they need to trade Kyle Kuzma, really sell it. But they've already kind of initiated a little bit. And then I think the other team that kind of comes to mind would be, I don't know. I mean, Antonio Spurs, I feel like they did as well. So I think it's Utah. Utah is another team that I think probably needs to really hit the eject button all the way, because they have the Jordan Clarksons, the Colin Sextons of the world, who are even Laurie, who I know they can't trade this season, but you know what I mean? There's certain teams that we know I think need to hit the eject button. New Orleans is probably the one team out of all of them that is still in denial.
Mm-hmm.
It's time, bro. It's time.
I mean, you said it best. Zeus decided to throw a lightning rod down there and say, it's time to move. It's time to move on, guys.
Smoothie King Arena needs to close down until they can get some new players, man. This is ridiculous.
100%, man. But yeah, that is our quarterly report. Let us know what you guys think down below. If there's some guys that you want to mention for any of the other questions that we've mentioned, leave those, or even teams as well. Let us know what you guys think down below.
Yeah.
Jay, this is actually going to kind of build off the quarterly report, but we're going to try and make this draft kind of based around the quarterly report. And for this draft, we're going to do the all quarter team. Basically,
Yeah.
guys that we've been like super impressed with the first quarter of the season. Doesn't have to be the best players. Of course, some of them might end up being the best, some of the best players in the league. But
Right.
just end up just like seeing guys that we've been like most impressed with through the first 20, 25 games of the season. We're just gonna go back and forth. Jay's gonna get the first pick. I'm gonna get the next one. We're gonna go through some of the guys that we're just most impressed with to start off the year. So Jay, throwing it over to you. Who's your first pick?
So, TV, I'm gonna put a stipulation of my own, at least on me, for how I draft in this one. So, guys, if you guys want to throw it out there, I'm not picking to try to beat TV in a 5v5 2K match. Like, I'm picking this team based off guys that have just like truly impressed me. So, I'm going to put the caveat that I'm not gonna select anybody that I believe is going to make an all-star team or has been an all-star before. So no Nikola Jokic's, no Shea, no Giannis, nobody like that. And so actually the first pick that I'm gonna go with is Ty Jerome. I know that this one is kind of silly because like he's just like a rotational player for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He he's just legitimately going to be in the six man of the year conversation this year. He's just been a real driving force for this team off the bench. He falls into my beloved category of of Tyus Jones All Stars. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
In terms of guys that like I tend to kind of fond over of like the keep it together point guard, able to run, run and operate an offense. He's shooting the three ball relatively well. He's a guy who's just like a real steady hand when Darius Garland comes off the floor, seems to be able to fit next to Darius, fit next to Donovan. Just playing relatively well so far this season. I want to give him his flowers as a guy that I've just like really been impressed by because like he's been a guy that's always been discussed in good graces, especially back when he was with Golden State, but has never really gotten the real playing time to like be like, yo, like, yeah, he is a great player. He is a pretty solid player. And I'm not saying like he's like this insanely like great player or anything like that. But I think just like for what he provides for this team, and like how he contributes to their identity of like everybody playing together, being able to fit and mold next to each other, versatility, in terms of his role and stuff like that. Like Ty Jerome is just a guy that like I said, he falls into that Tyus Jones school of like Jay's favorite players as like a guy who's just like a steady hand.
Yeah, definitely. In my opinion, the best backup point guard this year so far. He's been absolutely fantastic, and it does help that he's been on the best team in the league so far. So Ty Jerome, that's a great pick over there. For myself, I'm gonna have a few All Star guys in here, potentially an MVP candidate, but at the same time, again, these are guys that are like just like again really stood out in the first 25 games of the season. I'm gonna start off with Nikola Jokic, man. You got to do with the guy who's averaging a 30-point triple double on
Yeah.
unreal efficiency. He's averaging freaking 50% from three, bro. It's it's crazy how much he's just like being so much for the Denver Nuggets. There's a lot I have to say about Nikola Jokic, but he's been basically everything for the Nuggets this year, and he's the reason why they're not the worst team in the league because you see those if you see those plus minuses, if you see the box plus minuses, you know how bad the Nuggets are when he's off the court. So for my pick, I'm gonna go Nikola Jokic, probably the MVP right now, but man, it's hard to believe that every single year that we say, oh, there's just no way Jokic's gonna be better than what he was last year. Guys, he's better. That there's just no other way to put it. So I'm gonna play Jokic there as my first pick. Who's your second?
So my second pick is going to be somebody that we actually discussed on the podcast, so we're not going to have to go too long for him. But it's Jalen Johnson. Like he's just another guy that's just really impressed me so far in the beginning portion of the season. The hype around him for me personally, like this is one of those guys that like I haven't talked too much about, but has been a guy that I've really followed through the beginning portion of his career. I've always been kind of fascinated with his archetype. Kind of the minute that like coming out of Duke, they were kind of like comping him with like a Ben Simmons type. I kind of always been fond of like big wing size guards, like 6'6" and
Yeah,
above that
like
can like really
playmakers,
handle the
shot
ball.
creators. Yeah,
Yeah, like I kind of tend to fall in love with the archetype of guys like that, whether it's like a Jalen Johnson, Ben Simmons, Lonzo Ball kind of fit into this category to a certain degree as well as like a bigger guard archetype that could defend really well, pass the ball at a high level, like those type of things. And Jalen Johnson's finally kind of coming into his own in that regard. Again, I think a lot of the players that I'm going to pick for this draft are more so going to fit like just the archetypes of guys that I like to watch that are also playing really good basketball so far this season. And Jalen Johnson might be like the player that I'm like the most excited for of the players that I'm probably going to draft in this group.
100%. Yeah, like you mentioned, we talked about him a lot. He's been the great number two next to Trey Young over there in Atlanta. So Jalen Johnson, that's a great pick over there. He was actually one of the guys I was potentially going to be drafting in this draft too. So you end up taking it from me. Next guy I want to talk about. Bad timing because this guy just got injured, and we mentioned him a little bit earlier.
Hmm.
Franz Wagner.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
definitely been up there for me. I was kind of worried about the Magic offense when Paolo Banchero went down with injury. Franz is like, nah, we're good. He won a Player of the Week during this span as well, but in his 25 games that he played before he got injured, 24 points per game, basically 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 46% from the field. Still not the best 3-point shooter, but he's hitting a couple a game, which is good for them. I just think that seeing him as operates the number one option alongside this like number one defense has been a joy to watch, and he literally has single-handedly won the Magic a couple of games here, and is a reason why they're still number two in the East right now. A huge
yeah.
reason. Just sucks that he got injured now. Unfortunate for the Magic, but that doesn't take away how well he's been in the first 25 games of the season so far. So I'm going to draft him in this position.
Yeah, Franz is kind of like in that Chet Holmgren position of like this was like coming out the gate playing otherworldly, and the injury is gonna really hurt like his all-star and like all NBA stock. Because they were guys that like when they were healthy and playing at their like full caliber, like they had to be like in that conversation legitimately, like penciled in, but definitely in the conversation nonetheless. Now with the injury, depending on how much time he misses, along with Chet Holmgren missing the significant time, like those are two guys that like if you just use their first like 15 games, automatic all NBA, even if it's third team. But
Yeah,
now there's that caveat of playing at least 65 games, it might get
it's
a
gonna
little
be tough.
tricky.
Gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Gonna be tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, who you have as your next pick?
So the third pick I have is a guy he might mess around and make an all-star game this year, but I think he's gonna mess around and just like borderline fall out despite how good he's been this season. Cade Cunningham. I've been waiting, buddy.
Like that.
I've
Like
been
that pick.
waiting. I've been waiting, and I'm glad that it's finally coming to fruition. 23.9 points per game, 7.3 rebounds per game, 9.4 assists. He's top 20 in points, and he's third in the league in assists per game on a team that, I mean, doesn't have a ton of offensive distribution across the board. I love that Jaden Ivey has also been able to kind of like grow up before our very eyes as well this season. It comes to show you that competency goes a long way, people. I keep preaching this on this podcast. Whether it's the Sacramento Kings, the Houston Rockets, now the Detroit Pistons, the Orlando Magic, even a couple seasons ago. Like, man, competency goes a long way. When you have a roster where you can say you're fielding a legit 8 to 10 man rotation of legitimate NBA players, you'd be surprised what your team can do on a night to night basis. This Detroit Pistons team has not been like insanely otherworldly or anything, but they're a scrappy roster. They play hard, they play to the end. They're a team that puts teams in a bind in terms of no understanding that they're not just going to go out sad. And then Cade Cunningham, like I mentioned beforehand, is just having like a career year, and he's doing so while shooting 39% from three on 6.5 attempts per game. And although he's shooting 45% from the field, I think the
Career
overall
high.
the confidence as a scorer this season, I think has been the most important thing because Cade is since getting into the league has always been kind of relatively passive in my opinion in terms of like the way he's played. I understand he's averaged 17 points. I understand he's averaged up to 22 points like, last season, but I think his play style has always been much more passive. This year, he just feels like he's been playing a little bit more aggressively and it's showing because it's also kind of permeating throughout the rest of the team where everybody seems to be coming with that same like scrappy attitude. Love what
No.
Kate Cunningham has been doing this season.
Yeah, no, he was literally going to be my pick at the point guard position. He's been fantastic this year. Again, competency matters a lot. It also helps that he actually has Jane Ivey starting beside him when last year Monty Williams decided, you know what, these two can't play together. Let's just start
Yeah.
Killian Hayes. I'm so glad we're past that because they've been a great duo in the backcourt this year.
Yeah.
Definitely one of those guys. I mean, he was that guy for me early on this year. I was like, potential first time All Star Kate Cunningham. There's definitely a chance. He definitely has a chance this year, 100%. I do like
Yeah.
that pickup. This next guy I'm going to talk about though for my next pick, you mentioned him earlier. I think that he's been like probably one of like the standouts of the first quarter of the season. Tyler Hero.
Yeah.
He's been very good. Like you mentioned the percentages. We mentioned the fact that he's shooting freaking 64% true shooting, which is unheard of for someone like Tyler Hero. He's the reason why this Miami Heat team is like treading above water in terms of their offensive play. Um, Again, we'll continue for the rest of the season. Who knows? But so far this year, playing at an all-star level, been super efficient with his shooting, the best we've seen of Tyler Hero since probably the bubble version of him. So I'm gonna have him here in my lineup as well.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke on Tyler Hero a little bit earlier, so I mean, we don't have to go too crazy into him. But like, if you're going based off the first 25 games of the season, like this is a dude that we're definitely having like real conversations about making the All Star team. Like, I just don't think we came into the season thinking that he still kind of had that kind of potential. So you have to respect what he's been doing. And like you said in the earlier portion of the podcast, like offensively, like name the player who's above him in the pecking order in terms of like real efficiency and real like consistent offense on a night to night basis for the Miami Heat. Like, don't worry, I'll wait. Like it's
Yeah,
really him at the forefront so far this season that's been keeping them afloat on that side of the ball.
100%. I mean, he's their offense right now, and he's been the most consistent part. So he definitely, I think, deserves space on this lineup. Jay, who's your fourth pick?
Yeah, another guy who I think is probably just gonna be on the borderline of not making it, but I feel like deserves like some real bump. And it's a little bit of a homer pick. I gotta be honest with you. It's Nikola Vucevic. I think that like this has been a real resurgent year for him. Like he's been playing really well, 21 points per game, nearly 10 rebounds a night, has been shooting the ball like really, really well. I think the most important thing has been the 3-point numbers. Who in the world told Nikola Vucevic he was allowed to shoot 48% from the 3-point line on
Right.
nearly 5 attempts per game? Like who told him that he was allowed to step into his Kristaps Porzingis bag? Like if we had this back when DeMar DeRozan was on the roster, we might have really been a legitimate playoff team. I'm just saying, man. Where was this at?
Yeah.
Where was this at a couple seasons ago when we were trying to take on the Milwaukee Bucks one game one and then got blown out for the rest of the series? You know what I mean? So like I'm really happy to see what Nikola Vucevic has been doing so far this season. Obviously he's a guy that we have to consider as being like a legitimate trade candidate. Considering that like if you want to talk about like buying, I mean, or selling high, Nikola Vucevic might be like the poster child of guys that we would have that conversation for in terms of guys on the trade market. It's like Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine might be two of the like main players on the roster on the list of dudes that's like sell high because like these two guys have like really kind of like resurfaced after kind of well last year for Zach he barely played and Vucevic had easily one of his more disappointing seasons in the league last year, at least from a production standpoint. So to see what he's been able to do so far this year, I hope we get a pretty penny back for him.
You've turned Vucevic into a freaking tradable asset, which was
Yeah.
not the case last year. The fact you turned him and Zach LaVine to positive assets, where you might be able to get, a couple picks in return, like a decent prospect, who knows? But these two guys actually could be well sought out by like some contenders in the league. So shout out to Vooch, man. Shout out to Zach LaVine too. But they've been fantastic this year. Shout out to both of them.
Oh,
My next guy on this list I'm gonna put here. I was thinking of putting my guy RJ Barrett, but I want to like shout someone else new. First quarter of the season, Norman Powell. I'm gonna put him at my 2, just because he's been the number 1 scorer for the freaking Clippers this year. I know James Harden's definitely been their best player, but Norman Powell, man, 26 points per game on 48%, 49% shooting from 3 on 8 attempts, shooting 49% from the field. Look, he's a bucket getter. He said before the season that like, getting rid of Paul George is more addition by subtraction. He's proving it right now when the Clippers are over 500. So shout out to Norman Powell. We knew Toronto people knew that he was capable of being an absolute bucket when given the opportunity, and so far this year, he's been the lead scorer for the Clippers this year, and he's been absolutely fantastic. I don't know how. Again, might be one of those sell high candidates. Who knows? But he's been fantastic this year. I'm putting him on my team.
yeah, no, Storm and Norman has been on a completely different level so far this year. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of been like a sleeping giant in weight, like a sleeping giant in weight, and like it's been one of those seasons for him where like you could just tell he is having himself a blast playing for the Clippers as like a real like lead offensive option. And I mean they're damn near playing through him sometimes on offense, and like, I'm sure he's got to love that as a guy who's been like relegated to an off the bench microwave option for like probably his whole career, honestly, up until this
Yeah.
point.
For this guy like got like a 9.4 points per game increase since last year. That that
Jeez.
that that explains a lot. Norm has been absolutely fantastic. Jay, who's your final pick of this draft?
So my last pick kind of like validates that I've been showing a lot of Toronto like love on this episode in particular. And the last guy I'm gonna go with is Grady Dick. He is a guy that like when he's just been on the floor, like I've loved what I've seen, bro. I've just like what I've seen. He's walking the DeMar DeRozan path as a mid-range shooter this season. Like he's been hyper
Yes.
efficient from the mid-range area. If you're within 15 feet, he is making something happen. Both operating off the ball to get to his spots and as an on-ball creator, starting to kind of really slide into an opportunity where he can be like a trusted guy to go get you a bucket here and there. And I just like that for this team because like he's the guy that once upon a time we kind of like when he got drafted, we dubbed him as like the the white guy shooter Toronto desperately needed, right? Because you
Mhm.
guys needed spacing. But he's been able to develop his game into something so much more than that this season, where he can be somebody that like, yes, he stretches the floor for this team, and yes, they do desperately need that. But the fact that he's been able to kind of add this shot creation to his game, even if it's very subtle, and some would maybe say not the most efficient given the mid range aspect, but I think the fact that he's been so efficient from the mid range actually unlocks a completely different tool for him and does give the Toronto Raptors something else to work with on the offensive side of the ball. Grady Dick is going to be one of those guys, a part of this rebuild that like his fit on the roster is also going to be a real like factor into like the identity of the team, right? Like I feel like you guys have a real established core with guys like RJ, Emmanuel, Scotty, Grady Dick. Like I think there's a real core established there. I think the idea now is just like what's the pecking order? And like Grady
Yeah.
Dick is kind of like Grady Dick is kind of making that a real conversation because like his hyper efficiency on that side of the ball makes it where like you got to wonder like, yo, should we play through him more?
Yeah, no, that's definitely gonna be a question because when Scotty came back, and then there's gonna be more of a question when IQ comes back as well. Where
Yeah,
does he fall in line there? Like, where does he fall
right.
in line with those four guys? But when he was a second option, and we're gonna see more of this now because Scotty is out for the next couple of weeks. But him as a second option next to RJ Barrett, we've seen in multiple games where both these guys have scored 30 points apiece. That's all I'm saying. But man, he's been great this year. Shout out to him. Um, Over these next couple of weeks, like I mentioned, you're gonna see a lot more of high usage Grady Dick minutes. So it's gonna be a really like fun ride. It's been awesome for Raptor fans to see. I'm glad that like some other people are paying attention to it. Jay, for my final pick here, some guy I want to show some love. I want to put him on my four position, even though he hasn't been playing the four at all this year. Carl Anthony Towns, man. Carl Anthony Towns is someone who has
Yeah.
been a great player this first half of the season. I feel like with the Gobert addition in Minnesota, people forget that this guy was a walking 26 and 12 like before Gobert came on the team, basically averaging 25 points per game here, 14 rebounds, great decent efficiency, man. 52% from the field, 44% from three on five attempts. He's him and Jalen Brunson has been probably the best offensive duo in the league so far this year. The defense has a lot to be desired for sure, but Karl Anthony Towns in terms of providing what they needed and providing that kind of release valve on the offensive end so you don't have to have everything go through Jalen Brunson has been big. And there's a reason why they're like a number one, number two offense in the league. It's because they have these two guys running the pick and roll. And let's be honest, you're not gonna be able to stop that if you're 99% of the team. So shout out to Karl Anthony Towns, man. He has had a great transition to New York so far.
Yeah, I think if you look at the fact that the New York Knicks have openly changed their philosophy to actually being more of an offensive team, Carl Anthony Towns has really shaped that identity in a real way. Like he has been more than compliant with stepping into a role of like, okay, you guys need me to be a lead initiator from the perimeter. Like I could do that. You guys need me to be able to like create offense from the post area. I can do that. You guys need me to help in stretching the floor for a team that doesn't have a bunch of knockdown 3 point shooters. Like I could do that. Like he's basically been a Swiss Army knife on offense that like has really allowed them to do anything and everything they want to, and that's why they're a top five offense right now because like he's just created a lot of opportunities for a team where like they clearly have the talent, and you would actually view their talent as more defensive oriented. So the fact that they're
Yeah.
so good on offense goes to show you that if they get the defense clicking, like this is going to be one of the more dangerous teams, not just in the East but in the NBA. So like the fact that the offense is already humming like this, the day that the defense starts to come around, like, we're gonna start talking about the Knicks like Knicks fans are gonna really start talking with their chest out soon. Like I know that the Atlanta Hawks game the other day is kind of putting everybody's head down, but I think long term, we're gonna have to really kind of look at, you know, what the Knicks have been doing so far this season and how things kind of come to roost around, like March, April ish, when things start to really come down to the final wire. And I think the Knicks are going to be in there. And I think Karl Anthony Towns is going to be one of those guys that's like going to easily be like the MVP of the season for that team.
100%, man. He's been absolutely fantastic, and that's why he has a place on this team. Jay, we've come up with our 5-man lineups for the all-quarter team so far. What is your 5?
Yeah, man. So my 5 is going to be at the point guard position. We got Ty Jerome. 2 guard, we got Cade Cunningham. At the 3, I got Grady Dick. At the 4, we got Jalen Johnson. And at the 5, we got Nikola Vucevic.
That is a damn good lineup, man. I mean, like you stay true to going with a bit more of the low key guys, not many all stars or guys who are projected to be all stars this year. So shout out to you. That's a good lineup there. For myself, got Tyler Hero at the 1, Norman Powell at the 2, Franz Wagner at the 3, Karl Anthony Towns at the 4, and Nikola Jokic at the 5.
Yeah.
Let us know what you guys think of these 10 players down below. There's some guys that were missing as part of these all quarter teams. Is there any guys that you want to shout out? Let us know what you guys think down below. Jay, it is time for the final segment of the show. It is time for the NBA quiz. And Jay, we did this last year. We're going to bring it back for this year. Jay, I have a new pack of cards over here. And I'm going to try and describe to you who I have on the card, and you're going to try to guess. This is the 2022-2023 pack. So you should probably know these guys. That's all.
All right, bet.
So I'm going to pull out. I'm just opening this pack now, so I don't even know what's inside this pack at all. So I'm going to go with the first 10 guys I have here. And Jay, I'm going to try to describe them to you, and let's see if you're able to get them.
All right.
Let's see. All right. So, opening this pack right now. Bit of a tough one. There we go. All right. Let's see. First guy on this list. Okay. I'm going to try to go with some obscure clues to see if you're able to get these guys for this. So, the first guy in the pack, very well known for starting a lot of fights in the league, I will say. Known for starting a lot of fights.
Draymond Green?
Draymond Green light, I would say. This guy just feels like he's always angry. I will say that. This guy just feels he plays like he's angry all the time. Has a specific. I would say that he likes to. People. It's funny because it goes in his nickname, but this guy loves to start a lot of beef.
Oh, okay. So I was right. I was gonna say Isaiah Stewart.
Isaiah Stewart over here.
Yeah. Wow. Jeez, man.
Isaiah Stewart. All right. First.
When you said Draymond Light, I was like, huh, who qualifies for that? That was actually that was definitely the name that came to mind.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Next guy in the pack. Former dunk contest winner, probably one of the worst dunk contests of all time, has turned to a pretty good 6-man for current team right now.
Former dunk contest winner. Okay. Winner is very specific.
I could say winner, but will I say was it a good performance? Probably not.
Oh.
This guy's currently a pretty good 6-man for a Eastern Conference playoff team from last year. He got traded to this team, and he's actually he got an extension this past summer.
Is it Obi Toppin?
It is Obi Toppin. Yes, sir. This is a Knicks card from 2022-2023. But yeah, that dunk contest win, I think it was like during the pandemic, right? That was something.
It was very nasty, man. Cole Anthony dunked in Tim's because I guess he was trying to show how New York he was or something like that.
I don't know if that was the same dunk contest that Anthony Simons tried kissing the rim or something. I don't know if that was the same one.
Oh no, that was a different one. This group, I actually just looked it up. It's Cole. It was Cole Anthony. That was the one where Jalen Green missed like every dunk attempt he had.
Okay, yeah, I remember this. I was so excited for Jalen Green, and then he.
Yeah, like you knew it was a little bad when you saw that Juan Toscano Anderson was the fourth option.
Oh yeah,
in the dunk contest.
That was bad.
So yeah.
Yeah, shout out to. Yeah. I mean, Obi Toppin has the award. We'll always say it was like, yeah, not a good performance nonetheless. All right, next guy on this list. Jay, your team traded this guy for, I won't say a bag of chips, but you definitely could have gotten more for this guy in a recent trade. Doing pretty well.
If you didn't say recent trade, we could have named like 6 people that qualify for that one. That's probably Alex Caruso though, right?
Alex Caruso. I was going to say he's doing well on his new team. Doesn't even have to play like 20 minutes a game, and this guy's still just like, doing his thing over there in OKC. Shout out to Alex Caruso. All right, next guy in this pack. NBA champion. Probably has played more minutes this year than he should have just because this team does not have a backup center.
Oh, okay, please. He's like center. Former champion, probably.
He
Is this
definitely
like is this like DeAndre Jordan?
DeAndre Jordan.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was
This
trying to think of teams that like the center rotation is kind of weak. Oh my god, he was in Philly back then. Good goodness.
no, it's a Denver card, but he's wearing his Philly jersey. I'm assuming this is his first year with the Nuggets, but
Oh, okay.
but yeah, no, he should not be playing any minutes in the league today. It's just that Denver does not have a backup center. Yeah,
Yeah, Deron Holmes being injured really kind of put a
yeah,
hole in that
that
situation. They
was a
were looking
perfect
for
pick for them as
him.
well. He just freaking tore his Achilles in the summer league, which is tough. But yeah,
Yeah.
shout out to DeAndre Jordan, still in the league. Next player though, this man, a key member too. I mean, if you're in this rotation, that means you're pretty damn good because this coach won't play many players.
Mm. Okay, so he has to be a Nick, it sounds like. Is this like Miles McBride?
Miles McBride, man.
No way. Okay. No, that's a dub. That might be my best pull of the vid.
Yes,
Oh my
sir.
gosh.
Look,
What?
Tibbs only wants to play 8 guys. If you're one of those eight
Facts.
guys, you're on his good side.
Facts.
Shout
Facts.
out to Deuce McBride, bro. He's actually a very good backup point guard in this league.
Yeah.
I'll do like what is that? That's been six, I think five. Let's see how many more we can do. All right, next guy. This guy, a bit of a drop off this year. If you drafted this guy first round in fantasy, you're definitely crying right now. But he was a standout the last year, especially in the first half.
If you Ooh, is this Tyrese Halliburton?
Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned when you said draft first round in fantasy, the first thing I thought of was like, who are the guys that you think would go first, like within the first 2 rounds, first 2, 3 rounds of your fantasy team? And a guy like Tyrese, especially with the assists and the playmaking from last season, yeah, you would have definitely like drafted him early on. And yeah, no, this year he is not doing anybody any favors.
He is definitely not. So, yeah, tough for Tyrese Halliburton. Hopefully he can bounce back. The Pacers are like 10-15 right now. They definitely need him to. All right, next player. Funnily enough, he was on this. That I'm getting this version of him, but he's he's a definitely a Hall of Famer. I will say that. Currently, um, one of the best. He's like a point guard turned shooting guard now, just because he plays on this little team. But he's got a lot of success in this role. But he's a Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. Does he start?
He
Or
starts, yes.
he starts?
Yeah. I will say the team that I have the card with him now definitely weren't the biggest fan of his when he was around.
Oh,
I will say a couple of
okay.
the teams that he's been on is not they haven't been like huge fans of him.
Oh. And you said he's naturally a point guard, but he starts at the two for this team?
Yeah, and he's been a lot of
Excuse
success
me.
in that role too.
Hmm. I'm trying to think. You said that like,
He has the claim to probably having the best something in NBA history. He's probably has like
yes.
he gets the title of having the best of this sort of skill.
Huh. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say like, is this like former Bull Chris Dunn?
No, this guy's still probably gonna be an All Star this year.
Oh, I said you said Hall of Famer, didn't you? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Sorry. That was
yeah,
like that was a terrible pull.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, definitely has like the skill of like probably the best in NBA history at this certain skill. Very good. I mean, he's had a former NBA champion as well. Made it to the finals last year.
Huh. Is this Derek White?
Nope.
Oh.
He's probably levels above it. Like he's a Hall of Famer. This guy's gonna this guy
Yeah, okay, again, that Hall of Famer name is like kind of important too.
he's he had probably one of the best shots in like NBA history. One of the most iconic for sure.
Is this Kyrie?
Kyrie Irving.
Oh.
Yeah, the only reason I said
Got
he was not
you.
beloved by his team, it's the Brooklyn Nets, and
No, you make a good point. He up until more recently he had a kind of distasteful last couple of stops. That's a fair one.
yeah, that's why I was like, yeah. I mean, he's regained some face here with the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
That's good. Next guy on the list, probably the best season of his career so far this year. People have been waiting, he's people have been waiting for him to take this offensive jump, and he's finally probably doing it at this point. But he's one of the best defenders in the league.
Offensive jump. Is this like Evan Mobley?
Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's another pod staple. If he can get the offense going, he's gonna be like the next Tim Duncan. That's what we've been saying.
There you go, Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
I'll give you two more players to end it off here.
Okay.
This guy's probably going to be a big topic in our next episode. If you know what our next
Okay.
episode is,
Right.
um,
Um.
mostly because it's more trading him out of necessity because he probably won't resign. This
It's probably Brandon Ingram, right?
Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, been in the news crazy. We talked about that earlier on the podcast, but I mean, Buddy does not he does not want a contract extension. He either wants something significantly long term or he wants. But to me, it sounds like he just wants to be on a different team.
It seems like he wants to be on a different team for sure.
Yeah.
Last guy on this and for this quiz, he hasn't been on the court. People are saying, once this guy returns from injury, this team will be back again. This team will finally have a defensive identity. But this guy just does not play.
The first name that came to mind was Robert Williams. That's funny.
Honestly, that's a pretty good comparison. People love the idea of this guy. I don't know if people kind of overrate them because of this, but he'll definitely help this team who's probably near the bottom of defense right now.
Miles Turner is healthy, so it's not him.
No, I mean this guy barely plays. I don't think he barely played last year. I don't think he's played a game this year.
Oh, wait. So he's injured, but he's that important to them?
People try to make it out to be. Maybe he is, but people would say, oh, the defense will turn around once this guy's healthy.
Is this Jonathan Isaac?
Basically, Jonathan Isaac out west.
In the wet. Interesting. Okay, who? Oh my God. Who
I love these weird
qualifies
clues
for
because
this?
I could just give you certain aspects of this guy, but I love using these little storyline sort of clues.
Who qualifies for this? Is that like Walker Kessler?
He's playing right now. I'm talking about this guy is the definition of injury prone, and he's on one of them.
Oh,
He's on a historic franchise. People have been waiting for him to play. He's still not played.
I don't know.
He used to play for the Timberwolves.
He used to play for the Timberwolves. Wait a minute. Who are we thinking of here? You said it hasn't really played this season.
He hasn't played.
He hasn't played at all. That makes
No.
it so much more difficult. He hasn't played at all.
He had a good defensive run with this team when they went to the conference finals, and people are still hanging their hats on that.
What? Okay, wait a minute.
Historic franchise.
He's on a historic franchise now.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
But who the heck are you talking about? Is this Jared Vanderbilt?
Jared Vanderbilt.
Oh my God. Okay. The Timberwolves clue was a good one. Thank you. I appreciate that because I would have been stuck in the mud for that one. Okay.
People been waiting for this man to play. He has not played all year.
Man, people includes me. I was hype about Jared Vanderbilt coming into this season because I thought he was going to be healthy.
Nah. Last year he played 29 games too. The year before he played 22.
Oof.
people gotta stop waiting for this man, bro. People gotta stop waiting for
Yeah.
him. But yeah, those are the first 10 cards. Who knows if we're gonna do the rest of it? But those are the first 10 cards. And there's a fun quiz. Let us know what you guys think down below of this quiz. If you have any other quiz ideas, especially coming up to Christmas, let us know what you got. Some ideas that you have down below. Jay, we have reached another end of Fantastic Paul. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these people before we sign out?
We're back, man. We're trying to get back on the consistency tip. We finally kind of got our first episode in the last couple of weeks. Just had to kind of reset, refuel, get ourselves situated going into the holiday season. Obviously, going into the new year, we have real aspirations to continue to grow the pod in every way possible that we can. But also the basketball is going to pick up. Just next week, everything is going to like really unleash in terms of the trade capabilities, because there's going to be so many more guys that can get traded, which means that we're going to probably be having trade alert level conversations like once every 2 weeks, honestly, up until the trade deadline, because I mean we're bound to see some significant movement somewhere across the league. So stay tuned for that. Also stick real close to the Instagram and the TikTok. I feel like we say that a lot, but me in particular have been thinking about a lot of like one-off content I can do here and there to kind of give my thoughts on some stuff that kind of just be sitting around in my head when I'm listening to podcasts and stuff while I'm at work. And I kind of want to share some of those thoughts with you guys. So I'm gonna start maybe doing that as some kind of like NBA diaries thing or something like that. Not really sure what the name will be, but just kind of sharing more of my like more raw thoughts about certain NBA stuff. Some of it obscure, like the Ty Jerome thing I mentioned during the draft, and some stuff more like overarching, like the state of the Los Angeles Lakers right now. Stuff like that. So
Yeah.
stay tuned for the page. And of course, tune into the podcast every single week. We're back locked in, and of course, we're gonna try to stay as unique with the content as humanly possible. TV's wearing a banana, for Christ's sake.
I can't wait to get out of this freaking thing, bro. I've had this ring light just shut onto me for this entire episode. Ready to get out of this. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna close this down now because I'm gonna remove this thing and freaking like sweat my ass off right now. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out the pod daily stuff on the TikTok and Instagram. Check us out on YouTube, the podcast that works, and of course our individual stuff will be in their description down below. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.